All 7 episodes of Book of Boba Fett are finally available on Disney Plus. I was waiting for all episodes to come out before Riley and I decided to give Disney $8 US and binge all 7 episodes, which is exactly what we did the other day. So I'm going to give you my review for Boba Fett, the Book of Boba Fett, similar to all my other Star Wars reviews. I reviewed all the main movies, prequel trilogy, original trilogy, sequel trilogy, including the Clone Wars. I also reviewed the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian. FYI, just check out the Star Wars playlist, which I will have popped up in the top right-hand corner, along with my other Star Wars content over on the gaming channel. So we're going to try and keep it as spoiler-free as possible at first, but then I will talk some spoilers at the end of the video, FYI. But this first half will be spoiler-free, to the best of my abilities. So overall, 7 episodes of Book of Boba Fett. What were my honest thoughts? I feel like this is basically just an appetizer for Mandalorian Season 3. You could just call it Mandalorian Season 2.5. But it does take place after the events of Mandalorian Season 2. And you get to see some backstory regarding Boba Fett around the time of Return of the Jedi. A certain event that happens to Boba Fett in Return of the Jedi and how he gets out of that situation and what happens after that. So you do get some backstory for Boba Fett leading all the way up to things that happen in, I think, Season 1 and Season 2 of Mandalorian as well. Boba Fett goes from being one of the most ruthless bounty hunters in the Star Wars galaxy to wanting to be a benevolent crime boss and rule over Mos Espa and Tatooine as a benevolent leader. And, of course, he has Fennec at his side. Fennec is, of course, a badass assassin. And she has some great moments throughout this season of Book of Boba Fett. And they work out pretty good together, Boba Fett and Fennec. I do like that team up, that duo. But there definitely are times where I feel like Boba Fett gets pushed aside, even though the show is supposed to be about mainly Boba Fett. But, yeah, we'll talk about more of that in the spoilers. Now, it could have been better if Boba Fett was actually focused on fleshing out Boba Fett, as well as Fennec a bit more, and newer characters that are introduced specifically in the Book of Boba Fett, as well as the factions that are brought up throughout the story of Book of Boba Fett. But unfortunately, along the way, the Book of Boba Fett deviates. It loses focus to go wander off to other parts of the Star Wars galaxy. But if you did enjoy Season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, then I think that you will like Boba Fett. Like I mentioned, it's a nice appetizer for everybody that's just waiting patiently for Mandalorian Season 3. I don't know when that's coming out, but there's also a lot of people out there waiting for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I think that's coming on May 25th, which is significant because that was when the original Star Wars movie was released back in May 25th, 1977. So hopefully the Obi-Wan Kenobi miniseries will be good. When it's officially out, Riley and I will watch it, and I'll review that as well, probably over on this channel. So yeah, it was okay, the Book of Boba Fett. I don't think it was as good as Season 1 or 2 of The Mandalorian. It definitely had its moments. There was some action, but there were missed opportunities that could have been fleshed out if the show had more faith in Boba Fett, Fennec, and the characters that were introduced, as well as fleshing out this world that we're thrown into courtesy of the Book of Boba Fett. So I think that's as far as I can go with non-spoilers. It wasn't bad, but there's definitely some filler there. And a lot of this could have been lumped into a different show, and it didn't really need to be its own standalone show, or it could have been like reduced down to a standalone movie, right? It could have been like a movie event on Disney Plus instead, because I feel like trying to make 7 episodes out of this was a mistake by Disney Plus, Lucasfilm, and we'll talk about that right now in spoilers. So we are going into spoilers. I feel like that they dramatically changed Boba Fett. I know I said this already, to the go-it-alone bounty hunter and to now a crime boss who actually wants, I guess you could say, his own tribe, his own family, and he wants to now rule by respect and protect the people of Mos Espa as well as Tatooine. And the problem is, it would have worked if they would have made Boba Fett still a bit more ruthless to anyone that crossed him, because there were several people that crossed him and he kind of let it slide when Finnick and others were telling him not to do it, and he was like, no, I'm going to rule by respect, and it just didn't work out so well. Maybe that was the angle that Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, and the other writers were going for, is that, yeah, he fails miserably at being a crime boss, but at the end of the day, he still manages to win the day because he has some help from friends, and maybe if there's a season 2 of Book of Boba Fett, maybe you'll see, him learning from his mistakes and becoming a much better crime boss than he was in season 1, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I do think that there were times when Boba Fett was too much of a pushover, and that was not something I feel like worked for the character, because in my opinion, Boba Fett was always the type of bounty hunter that wasn't really one to take much shit from people, and he does take a lot of shit from other factions on Mos Espa, and I definitely think that if season 2 is going to happen, they need to give Boba Fett a bit more teeth and make him more of the focus of the show. We'll get to that in a moment, and make it to where he is the crime boss. He's the new Dino. But I think that's the word, Dino, I think. So they need to make it to where, yeah, this guy is now in charge. He's the main crime boss of Mos Espa or Tatooine, and we'll just have it go forward into season 2. And we need to focus the show on Boba Fett and Finnick and the other characters that make up the Book of Boba Fett. And this is where the show, I think, kind of deviates. So trusting other crime bosses was a bad idea, obviously. That was stupid. And I don't know why Boba Fett would have trusted these other factions to stay neutral against the Pikes. And it just ends up blowing up in his face. And I definitely think that Boba Fett needs to take more charge. Hopefully he'll do that in season 2. He didn't do as well in season 1. There were a lot of things that were rushed, story arcs. Finnick is pretty good right hand. She did a good job, and she's a badass fighter and killer. But she definitely gets a lot more of the spotlight. Boba Fett does tend to get pushed over to the side at times when it comes to Finnick and other characters we're going to talk about in just a second. Overall, some of the characters that were part of Boba Fett's gang were all right. I love the Gamorreans. It sucks what happens to the Gamorreans. They get murdered. They get pushed off a cliff. That kind of sucked for them. The Wookiee that they add, Karsten, I think they call him Karsten. I think that's his name. If I get it wrong, I apologize. Hopefully no Wookiees will be coming to pay me a visit. And I think that he exists in Legends. And he's pretty much a badass Wookiee. I mean, what Wookiee isn't a badass? You got Chewbacca. And now you got Karsten, and you have a few others out there. And he's not really as nice as Chewbacca. He's a little bit meaner. But I do like the fact that he does become likable, and it's very possible that you may see more of him in a future season of Boba Fett, being important muscle to the Boba Fett crime family or syndicate or whatever you want to call it. And what else? Oh, yeah, the modders, the mod gang, which are basically cyborgs, I guess. They could have done a better job with them. Now, the actors I have nothing personally against, but the modding looked a little cheap, and they have these mopeds that look awful. They look ridiculous compared to, say, speeder bikes, which are pretty awesome. There's plenty of speeder bike action throughout the story of Book of Boba Fett, but these speeder mopeds they look awful. They need to be ditched. It would be more impressive if the modders just walked around Mos Espa instead of using the damn mopeds. My hope is all the mopeds got destroyed against the Pikes and those robots. We're kind of like droidicas, but they're like giant robots. I think they're like scorpions or something. I don't know for sure. But the decisions Boba Fett make are pretty dumb. Like, he goes and grabs his Rancor, which I guess we only get to see Danny Trejo once. It was a nice cameo. But it would have been cool if we would have had more Danny Trejo and more time with the Rancor and more bonding between him and Boba Fett and him learning to actually ride the Rancor, because that was one of the things that Boba Fett wanted to do, was have Danny Trejo teach him how to ride the Rancor, because he gets a new Rancor, which was kind of cool. But then the Rancor goes crazy after destroying the droids and tears up a good chunk of Mos Espa. So that was interesting. So, yeah, that was another rushed example of Boba Fett. What else happened? Oh, yeah, so when I was talking about this show losing faith and focus. Now, some people really enjoyed these other moments and these other characters they brought back from The Mandalorian. Now, admittedly, myself included. However, this show is supposed to be about Boba Fett. This is supposed to be a show that exists in the same realm as Star Wars as well as The Mandalorian, but you're not showing much faith in Boba Fett, Fennec, or the other characters or the story itself by shifting focus over to other characters and other things going on. For example, that deviates, I think, episode 5, the show deviates to basically another episode of The Mandalorian. It just like, oh, you know what, screw it. We're going to go hang out with The Mandalorian. He's collecting a bounty. He's trying to find the surviving members of his faction. And he has the Darksaber now. He kind of sucks using the Darksaber. He kind of hurts himself a little with it. And he still has the spear. Yeah, the Mandalorian spear that's made out of Beskar. And he has the armorer make a little chainmail for Grogu. But then it happens that the other survivor, along with the armorer, is a Vizsla. And of course, the Vizslas are quite famous in Mandalorian lore. And he obviously wants the Darksaber, so they end up fighting. But it ends up basically being a draw. And out of nowhere, the armorer then asks, have each of them ever taken their helmet off? Of course, Vizsla never has, and unfortunately for Mandalorian, he had to fess up and say, yeah, I have taken it off. And of course, he basically gets kicked out of the club, even though there's only 2 members of this club left. There's only 2, like the armorer and the Vizsla guy. Piz Vizsla, I think that was his name. That's it. I mean, I think I would be changing my rules a little bit there, especially since other factions of the Mandalorians, they don't have to have their helmets on all the time. So Mando's like, okay, peace out, bye. And then he just leaves, and he still has his helmet on. So it's not like a big deal to him. He don't give a crap. He'll just probably go form his own faction or join somebody else. So he ends up going to Tatooine, and he meets up with the chick at Mos Eisley, the chick that does all the droid stuff. I forget her name. But she got him a new ship to replace the Razor Crest, and it's basically a Naboo starfighter from episode 1 and episode 2. So they completely rebuild I think it's an N1, if my lore when it comes to starfighters in Star Wars do not fail me. I think it's an M1 Naboo starfighter, so it gets completely rebuilt. It ends up looking really cool. It's very souped up looking compared to the OG N1 starfighters. Most of the yellow is gone. It's just chrome. It's all metal looking, but it works. But there's kind of a giveaway during the whole montage of them rebuilding this Naboo starfighter. Is they replaced the part in the back where you would put the droid, like the R2 unit or the whatever R unit you want to put it back there, with a bubble. And automatically, if you're paying attention, you're like, oh, come on, they're bringing back Grogu. They're going to bring back Grogu, and that's where Grogu's going to chill in the back with Mando. So they kind of gave that away. And this is another prime example why this is basically a Mandalorian episode that they just threw into Boba Fett. Even though I did enjoy it, it really didn't have much of a place in Boba Fett if we're going to focus this show specifically on Boba Fett and friends. I don't have a problem with Mando showing up to help Boba Fett and Fennec out. That would have been cool. But this was basically a Mandalorian episode, our prequel to Mandalorian Season 3. So you have that, and of course Mando comes to help. You have Cobb Vanth return, but he runs into somebody else that leaves him for dead. We'll talk about him in a moment. But it also shifts focus not only from Mando to Grogu, which is no real surprise because of how popular the child is, or Baby Yoda Grogu, who's hanging out with Luke now, and Ahsoka shows up. And I would have really liked more time between Ahsoka and Luke. They get a little bit of time, but not very much. And I think this is another example of bringing something over from another show that would have made more sense, like Ahsoka's show, because she's supposed to have her own show starring the lovely, talented Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka. It would have been cool if we would have had more time with her and Luke, and maybe we will have more time with her and Luke in her own show. That would be awesome. I would love to see that, because there's a lot of backstory that Ahsoka could fill Luke in on when it comes to his father, Anakin Skywalker, who was obviously Ahsoka's teacher and master and basically older brother. So it would be cool to see that bond and that emotion build up between Ahsoka and Luke, but we get a little bit of it, but not much. And I think the CGI, like the deepfake for Luke, has improved dramatically, and that was pretty cool. But once again, the focus is being shifted away from Boba Fett to Grogu and Luke and Ahsoka and Mando, and it just doesn't really make sense. Oh yeah, R2 was also there, so that was kind of cool to have R2 there for a few cameos. But ultimately, Grogu has to choose because Mando shows up. He talks with Ahsoka. And one other thing I think really didn't make sense to me is the fact that Mando's having trouble using the Darksaber, even though the armor was trying to teach him how to use the Darksaber. He can use it, but he's not exactly a master at using it yet. I think that an opportunity was missed with at least Ahsoka. Like, Ahsoka and him should have had some sparring sessions out in the woods. I don't know where Luke's New Jedi Academy is taking place. Is it the same Jedi Academy that ultimately gets destroyed in the sequel trilogy? I'm assuming that's the case. I forget what the planet's name is. But no, it's not the island planet. I forgot that planet. It's the planet before that. And I don't think it's Yavin 4 either. It could be Yavin 4. I don't think it's Yavin 4. Now, in Legends, I think it was Yavin 4 where Luke sets up his new Jedi Academy. But anyways, I think that was a missed opportunity. They should have had Mando and Ahsoka doing some sparring sessions so she could help teach him to become better at wielding the Darksaber. Now, once again, that would be better suited in two other places, either Ahsoka's show or in Mandalorian Season 3. But unfortunately, the shift was taken away from Boba Fett. And when it comes to Luke, he gets this bag of chainmail that's got the Beskar chainmail, and it's a gift from Mandalorian to Grogu. And so Luke decides, because Grogu's getting a little bit better at learning how to use the Force and is moving a little bit faster now, avoiding the training droid shooting at him. So Grogu is starting to get his skills, starting to, I guess, relearn his skills that he learned at the Jedi Academy. But it's obvious to Luke that Grogu's heart's just not really in it. And so Luke leaves Grogu with a choice. He's like, okay, I have two choices for you, Grogu. Either A, you can return to the Mandalorian, Din Djarin, and accept this gift, this chain armor, this chainmail, which is kind of cool looking, a little chainmail you can put under his little outfit. Or you can have Master Yoda's lightsaber. And you can only pick one, Grogu. You have to pick one. If you pick Master Yoda's lightsaber, then you must commit to becoming a Jedi, and I will train you to become a great Jedi. However, if you pick the chainmail, then you have to go back to Din Djarin because that's the path you wish to walk. And ultimately, Grogu picks the chainmail. He'd rather be with Din Djarin, which makes sense in the fact that a lot of people that were concerned about Grogu's fate in leading up to Episode 7, well, now your worries, I guess, can be alleviated because of the fact that at this point, Grogu is not going to be a Jedi. He's going to be a foundling, and he's going to stay with Din Djarin, Mando. So that's cool. Doesn't mean that he'll survive, but chances are he probably will because it's Star Wars and it's Disney. So he doesn't get destroyed at the new Jedi Temple prior to the events of Episode 7, as of right now. So R2 takes Grogu back to Tatooine in the X-Wing, and ultimately during the Battle of Mos Espa, you have Grogu reunite with Mando. And obviously Grogu's getting a little bit better at his Force powers. He helps break one of the droidekas. I'm just going to call it a droideka Mark II, I guess. And he also helps put the Rancor to sleep. So there's a really cool standoff near the end between this Rancor, which is not a fully grown Rancor, according to Danny Trejo. It's like a pup. So it has yet to grow to full size. And it's Baby Yoda, a.k.a. Grogu, who stands off with the Rancor. And I at this moment, you feel sorry for the Rancor because you're like, oh, what's Grogu going to do to this Rancor? And, of course, Grogu just calmly uses the Force to I guess, knock it out, right? It doesn't kill the Rancor, obviously. It just knocks him out, puts him to sleep. And then Grogu just waddles over to the Rancor, pats him a little, then passes out right beside him. So I'm guessing in the future, Grogu and this Rancor are going to be BFFs. So that'd be quite interesting. Maybe you'll have the Rancor riding around in the desert with little Grogu on top of him. But once again, it's just another prime example of cool moments between these characters, but the focus is lost. The focus is completely lost from the Book of Boba Fett when you shift off to go focus on the Mandalorian, on Grogu, on Luke, and Ahsoka. Even though I love these characters, you have to focus predominantly on Boba Fett, Finnick, and the other characters you're introducing in the Book of Boba Fett. I don't know if this was a decision by Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, or was this encouraged or pressured by the powers that be, like Kathleen Kennedy, head of Lucasfilm, or the heads of Disney, because they know how popular Mando, Grogu as well as Luke and Ahsoka are, and they're like, hey, could you just squeeze some Luke and Ahsoka and Grogu and Mando into Book of Boba Fett? Maybe it was a peer pressure thing, and ultimately Jon Favreau caved a little to the peer pressure. Maybe him and Dave Filoni did, or maybe they ran out of material, right? Maybe it was Kathleen Kennedy and the heads of Disney that wanted this Book of Boba Fett show to begin with, and they didn't have as much material to work with and not as much time to flesh it out. And so they're like, screw it, we're just going to throw in some Mando, throw in some Grogu, some Luke, some Ahsoka, some R2, and call it a day. So that's the issue I have. Even though these are moments that people really enjoyed about Book of Boba Fett, I feel like in the end they actually hurt the Book of Boba Fett. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, there are a few cameos that do come here and there, but the main one I want to talk about is the return of a popular character from the Clone Wars. And for the most part, I enjoyed the return of Cad Bane, but I do feel like that Cad Bane needed a little bit more time, and you had the opportunity to give him more time, to have him in the background causing issues throughout the season, but they only bring him back in like episode 6 and 7. And I think there was missed opportunities with Cad Bane. And for the most part, like, he looks all right. He doesn't look 100% like his Clone Wars counterpart, but I mean, CGI, has come a long ways. It could have been a little bit better. He could have looked a little bluer. The face could have looked it could have been a little bit more work with the face. It's not awful. And like Riley was telling me, she wishes he had a bigger hat because Cad Bane's brim is usually bigger, but he has worn different hats throughout the Clone Wars. That part didn't really bother me. I think the issue I kind of had with Cad Bane was, once again, we didn't have enough Cad Bane. And I believe it's the same voice actor that voices Cad Bane, so that was cool. And I think that Cad Bane makes decisions that Cad Bane would have never made. But then again, I mean, this is an older Cad Bane than the Cad Bane we know of from the Clone Wars era. So he's a lot older now. Maybe he's just out for revenge now. Maybe he's no longer just about money. So he's obviously been hired by the Pikes, probably being paid a considerable amount of money to make sure that all these different groups on Tatooine, get in line with the Pikes, because the Hutts have basically lost control of Tatooine. After Jabba's death, the Pikes have slowly but surely rolled in to seize control, and they're the main antagonists, along with Cad Bane and the Book of Boba Fett, that Boba Fett and his friends, like Fennec and the Cradston, the Gamorreans, the Mods, have to deal with. Now, the first time we see Cad Bane appear is he's walking into Freetown, which is the small town that Cobb Vanth is marshal over. They renamed the town. And this is right after Mandalorian leaves. He stops by, tries to recruit Cad Vanth and Freedom Town to help Boba Fett and Mos Espa. And within like a few seconds, you have this dude walking into town that Mando didn't even notice. Like, how could you not see this one dude walking into town as you're heading back for your Naboo starfighter? You think that Din Djarin would have turned around and been like, who the hell is that? And he would turn around to help out Cobb. But he's like, no, I'm gone. I'm going to hop back in my sports car, my sweet, souped-out turbo M1 starfighter, and fly back to Boba Fett's palace without a care in the world. Who cares about this one dude with the obviously menacing-looking coat and the hat walking towards town? Probably nothing to worry about, right? But, of course, you have Cad Bane show up, and he's basically trying to tell Cobb Vanth, look, the Pikes will pay you double whatever Boba Fett's offering you just to stay out of this. You stay out of this, you don't help Boba Fett, and of course Cobb Vanth, he's already agreed to help Boba Fett and Mando out. Plus Cobb is anti-spice as well. So you have a lot of you have Boba Fett, he's anti-spice. You have Cobb Vanth, he's anti-spice. But obviously the Pikes, that's one of their big businesses, is getting that spice from Kessel and shipping it around. But there are those on Tatooine that want to stop them. And that puts Cad Vanth at odds with Cad Bane. And, Cobb's deputy shows up. And now there's like a standoff, a 2v1 standoff between Cobb, his deputy, and Cad Bane. And it doesn't end so well for Cobb. And it definitely doesn't end so well for the deputy. The deputy gets destroyed by Cad Bane, which was awesome. Because it's Cad Bane, right? And basically Cobb Vanth is left for dead. Spoilers. I know this is the spoiler section. But there is a post-credits scene where Cobb Vanth is not dead. In fact, I think he's in a Bacta tank, and he's about to be modded, similar to the way that Fennec was modded. So I guess Cobb Vanth will be saved and brought back to future Mandalorian or Boba Fett. So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like it's just a prime example of Jon Favreau, Filoni, either just themselves losing faith in the season, not having enough time to flesh out the characters, the faction, the story of Boba Fett for it to stand alone. And it would have been awesome if we would have just some Mando cameo near the end. That would have been cool. I had no problem with that. But to lump in basically at least like an episode and a half of Mandalorian into Boba Fett and also bring back Grogu just because he's extremely popular along with Luke and Ahsoka really doesn't make sense, and it completely deviates from this show. And I feel personally that that's problematic for the Book of Boba Fett because it has to, in order for it to succeed, it has to stand alone with, you know, some cameo, some help. But you look at another spin-off series, and I know some of you are probably like, what's this show? Frasier, okay? I absolutely love Frasier. An awesome sitcom. But it was a spin-off of another popular sitcom, Cheers. Now, there were cameos throughout the series where you had characters from Cheers show up to hang out with Frasier. But most of the time, Frasier existed because of the characters established in Frasier. Like Frasier, his brother Niles, their dad Martin, Daphne, Roz, Eddie, which was a cool Jack Russell Terrier. Of course, several Jack Russell Terriers played Eddie throughout the series. But the point is, the show focused and put faith into these characters and surrounded Frasier with brand new characters, and the show was a success. In fact, a lot of people consider Frasier to be even better than Cheers. This is the way it should have been with Boba Fett. And unfortunately, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, just for some reason, were either rushed into making this series, and maybe that's the case. They were peer pressured by the higher-ups, whether it was Kathleen Kennedy, Disney, or both, into trying to create a quick new series to put out in time for December 2021 in order to hold people over for like Season 3 of Mandalorian and for Obi-Wan Kenobi and all the other shows that they're working on for Star Wars, including Ahsoka's own show. Or this was just a matter of Jon Favreau and Filoni just not having enough material to go by, thinking at first that Book of Boba Fett would be a cool series, but at the end of the day, they found themselves stretched too thin with not enough material, and they were forced to bring in characters, a little help from Boba Fett's friends and frenemies, because Luke's not exactly a friend of Boba Fett's. So, yeah, I mean, it just became Boba Fett and Friends, and it might as well have been episodes dedicated to Mandalorian Season 3, to be honest. Or Boba Fett should have been like a standalone TV movie special, right? You could have made this like a 2-3 hour movie or a two-parter, something like that, and it would have probably been a lot better. Or at the very least, they should have just had more faith in Boba Fett, Fennec, and the characters that they introduced and the factions in order to make Boba Fett do better as its own thing in Season 1. But unfortunately, it did not. But at the same time, maybe, just maybe, they'll do better with Season 2 of the Book of Boba Fett if there's a Season 2. But at this point, you might as well just take the characters introduced in Book of Boba Fett and just have them appear every now and then in future episodes of The Mandalorian or Ahsoka or some of the other Star Wars shows. And maybe that's kind of the point, because Disney wants you to have to watch all these shows. Maybe that's why they brought Mandalorian in and Grogu and Luke and Ahsoka, because they want people that go and watch Season 3 of Mandalorian or Season 1 of Ahsoka or other shows to have to go and watch these other shows in order to pick up things from Season 1 and 2 of Mandalorian, as well as Season 1 of Boba Fett. Maybe it's all part of a bigger plan. And by the way, can I just say this? I'm sick and tired of Tatooine being the focal point in the Star Wars universe. I realize it's the first planet we see in A New Hope, but it's a desert planet, and I think there's a lot more interesting worlds in the Star Wars galaxy. Why do we always have to go back to Tatooine? You know, from the prequels to even like at the end of the sequel trilogy, they couldn't help but bring Rey back to Tatooine, even though she'd never been there, and basically Jakku was Tatooine point 2. So, yeah, I'm just tired of Tatooine, and if we don't get another season of Boba Fett, it won't really hurt my feelings. I think that a lot of the loose ends could be easily tied up in like a future Mandalorian episode or a few Mandalorian episodes. So just tie up the loose ends in Mandalorian Season 3 and let's just not bother with Book of Fett Season 2, especially with the way they handled the first season of Book of Boba Fett. Now, if Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, and I think Rodriguez was involved in it as well, maybe a few others, if they do a better job and they have more time to flesh out the characters and the story and a Season 2 arc for Boba Fett and focus more on Boba Fett, Fennec, and the characters and factions of Book of Boba Fett, with maybe some cameos from Mando, Grogu, and others, that'll be fine, but do not shift focus away from Boba Fett like you did in Season 1. But in conclusion, for Season 2 of Boba Fett to be better than Season 1, you have to get Boba Fett back to being a little bit more ruthless and realize that sometimes respect's not enough. You have to take charge. You have to take action against these assholes that are going to disrespect you, and give him moments of take charge. And at the same time, give Fennec her due as well, because she's a good right hand for Bubba. They have good chemistry. They're a great team. Cameos are fine, but don't deviate the show away from the Book of Boba Fett to do more Mandalorian stories and more Ahsoka, Luke, Grogu stories. Cameos are fine, but keep the focus of this show predominantly on the Book of Boba Fett, which is supposed to be Boba Fett, Fennec, and friends, like Karsten the Wookiee, as well as the mods. But once again, if we could just do away with those mopeds, that would be great. Just give them speeder bikes, for crying out loud. The speeder bikes are way cooler than those stinking mopeds. Hopefully Cad Bane also survived, because like a lot of people are speculating that he had like a blinking light thing after Boba Fett stabbed him with the Tusken stick. So hopefully we'll see more Cad Bane down the road, because I do feel like that Cad Bane was, for the most part, wasted in Boba Fett. I mean, if they would have given him a little bit more to do in this series and maybe had him behind the scenes doing shit on behalf of the Pikes throughout the series, that would have been kind of cool, or at least just alluding to the fact that he's there. Maybe not showing him, but maybe seeing his shadow and hearing his voice or something. That would have been awesome, and just have him in the background. And they definitely needed to give us some backstory regarding the rivalry between Cad Bane and Boba Fett. And maybe that's part of the design, right? In order for you to learn more about Cad Bane, they're going to make the viewer that's only watched Mandalorian Season 1 and 2 and Book of Boba Fett go back to Clone Wars. By the way, Clone Wars is freaking awesome, though, but maybe not everybody wants to go back and watch Clone Wars. But in order to learn more about Cad Bane, you have to go and watch the Clone Wars. But, some backstorying with Cad Bane and Boba Fett would have been cool. They did do that with Grogu at the Jedi Temple, because Luke and him were having a moment. And it was pretty epic, because you had a few Jedi standing off against the 501st, being gunned down by the 501st. That was interesting. And one thing they didn't really address is the fact that who led the 501st into the temple during the Jedi Purge. I think it was somebody's dad. Whose dad was that again? I don't remember. But anyways, you think that might cause a little issue between Grogu and Luke, knowing that, hey, wasn't that your dad, dude, that came into the temple and wiped everybody out? And Luke's like, yeah, that wasn't me. I'm trying to right my dad's wrongs, Then there was another cool flashback with the founder talking about what happened to the Mandalorians. They were destroyed by TIE bombers, so that was kind of cool to see Mandalorian having like tons of TIE bombers flying over it, being blasted to bits. I guess they didn't have time for the Death Star. Maybe the Death Star was still under construction at that point. But they were talking about the fact that, whoever wields the Darksaber has to do so in combat. And the fact that Bo-Katan was basically given the dark lightsaber by Sabine and Rebels. Once again, another prime example. Hey, you want to learn more about the Darksaber? You have to go watch Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, which isn't as good as Clone Wars. I mean, it has a couple of good episodes, but overall, Clone Wars was way better. So, once again, in order to learn more about Bo-Katan and the Darksaber, you have to go back and watch those other shows. So the entire point was the fact that Bo-Katan did not earn the Darksaber in battle. There's a curse which doomed the Mandalorians to be all but wiped out by the Empire. Speaking of flashbacks, I forgot to mention this. The whole getting Slave One back between Boba and Fennec was pretty cool. I like how they were able to scout and sneak back into the palace in order to get Slave One back. So that was awesome. And when Boba Fett used it to take out the biker gang that allegedly killed the Tusken tribe that had taken him in and basically saved his life, even though they kind of treated him like crap at first, he kind of developed a bond with that tribe. But at the end of the day, we all know that it wasn't the biker gang responsible for the destruction and death of that particular Tusken gang. It was the Pikes. It also didn't make sense that Bubba would take Slave One all the way back to the Sarlacc pit to see if his armor was inside the Sarlacc pit, when it's pretty obvious that he climbed out of the Sarlacc pit with his armor on. I guess Bubba just forgot about climbing out of the Sarlacc pit with his armor on, which he would not have survived the Sarlacc pit without the Beskar armor. And I also guess he forgot about being woken up by some Jawas taking his gear off of him and knocking his ass out. But that's the last time we actually see him use Slave One, aka the Fire Spray. The Fire Spray is the name of the model of the ship, but the name of the ship itself in Star Wars canon is Slave One. Either name is fine in my opinion, but as an OG Star Wars fan, I'm going to continue to call it Slave One. Personally, in the Battle of Mos Espa, if I was Boba Fett, I would have grabbed Slave One instead of the Rancor. That would have made more sense because it had the firepower to destroy both of those droids with relative ease and a lot less issue. But hey, we got a cool battle between the Rancor and the droids and a cool standoff between Grogu and the Rancor. So at least we got that. But overall, those flashbacks were really cool, and it would have been nice if there would have been a flashback between Cad Bane and Boba Fett to help give a little bit of backstory between the two characters for anyone that never watched the Clone Wars and have no idea who Cad Bane is and why there's this rivalry between Cad Bane and Boba Fett. I think I rambled on enough about the Season 1 review of Boba Fett. If I missed anything, feel free and let me know. Overall, I thought it was okay. It could have been way better, and I feel like it probably needed more time in the oven, a little bit more fleshing out of characters, story arcs, factions, etc. And it relies too much on bringing friends over from Mandalorian, such as Din Djarin, Grogu, Luke, Ahsoka, in order to help prop up the show a little bit. But maybe Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni will do a better job with Season 2 of the Book of Boba Fett, if there's a Season 2. Here's hoping that Obi-Wan Kenobi is good when it comes out in May, and I hope that Season 3 of Mandalorian is awesome as well, but we'll just have to wait and see. Your thoughts, your views, your opinions regarding Season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett, or any of the other Star Wars Disney Plus shows like Mandalorian, or shows they got planned, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ahsoka, etc. As always, welcome below in the comments section.